Have you ever felt this ambient, unexplainable annoyance every time you interact with the modern web?
Like a low-level static.
Yeah, exactly. Just this static of frustration, like when a customer service bot just talks in circles, or, when a platform demands your phone number just to read one tiny article.
Or they shift the interface just to make the settings menu harder to find.
Right. And today, we are going to prove to you that this feeling, that ambient annoyance you feel, it's not a user interface glitch.
Not at all.
It is actually a symptom of a catastrophic lack of bare metal custody. So, welcome to the deep dive.
It's good to be here.
So if you've ever played a tabletop role-playing game, you're probably familiar with this concept called a session zero.
Right, before the game actually starts.
Exactly. Before you roll any dice, the players sit down and they basically establish the rules of reality for the campaign. You agree on the boundaries.
Which is honestly the perfect framing device for what we're doing today.
I think so too. Consider this deep dive our very own session zero. We're doing a foundational audit of our digital reality.
Because, before we can have any real conversation about AI or cloud infrastructure, we kind of have to tear off the drywall and look at the actual reality of these systems.
Yeah, and the sources we have today are they're incredibly unique for this.
Oh, absolutely.
We aren't looking at polished marketing copy. We're looking at internal developer notes, system logs, architectural blueprints.
And AI research transcripts, too.
Right. Specifically related to the Safehood protocol, this thing called the Clockwork Necronomicon, and a suite of sovereign software from Bar Software.
It's a wild stack of documents.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore this concept called zero trust. But we need to be super clear right up front.
We are not pitching a cybersecurity product.
No, we aren't doing a sterile slide deck presentation. We're exploring zero trust as an existential operating stance, a philosophy of digital survival.
And how to reclaim your reality from algorithmic extraction.
Using a highly unusual tactic that our sources call weaponized whimsy.
Which is just a fantastic phrase.
It really is. So to start, we have to look at the environment we're currently operating in.
Right, the baseline.
Yeah. There's this pervasive assumption that the internet, especially enterprise cloud infrastructure managed by these massive tech monopolies, is this pristine miracle of modern engineering.
Like it's all clean rooms and glowing servers.
Perfect math holding everything together.
Yeah, well, the marketing departments have spent, billions of dollars to manufacture that exact image.
But the reality in these documents is it's completely different.
The ground truth reality is brutal. The sources describe the internet grid not as a polished miracle, but as a volatile, high-friction dungeon held together by vintage regex logic and duct tape.
A dungeon held together by vintage regex logic. Let's just translate that for a second for everyone.
Please do.
Regex, or regular expressions, is basically a way of searching for text strings.
Right.
It's incredibly old foundational code. So the idea that global banking and healthcare networks are resting on 40-year-old string-matching logic and digital duct tape, it's terrifying.
It should be terrifying. And this exact architecture creates what the sources call the Beige world.
The Beige world.
Yeah, that's the modern corporate tech ecosystem. It's an environment that's completely obsessed with two things: algorithmic extraction and frictionless profit margins.
And to get those margins, it prioritizes compliance theater over actual engineering.
Exactly. It wants everything to look smooth, no matter how compromised the foundation actually is.
Which leads us to one of the most visible traps of this beige world, which is the SaaS rent trap.
Oh, the rent trap. It's everywhere.
We're all in it. You don't buy software anymore, you rent it.
You rent access to it.
Yeah, but the financial toll of this has just spiraled out of control.
The extraction is staggering. Businesses are trapped paying like $900, sometimes thousands a month.
Just for basic tools.
And then they get hit with surprise per seat fees just because they hired one new employee.
And what are they even paying for? Subscriptions to platforms they don't even own.
You're paying a premium to surrender your own data to a third-party vendor. They hold the root credentials.
You're basically just a tenant in someone else's database.
And the landlord has a master key to your unit.
But the landlord isn't just collecting rent, right? They're actively mining your life.
Exactly. The extraction does not stop at the monthly invoice.
It comes for your privacy. And the sources detail this specific scenario that I think perfectly illustrates it. They call it the stroller problem.
Oh, the stroller problem is such a perfect example of the extraction paradox.
So break it down because, imagine you do one isolated thing. You search for a baby stroller.
Right. And in a rational, sane system, That query would just exist between you and the search engine.
But we don't live in a rational system. We live in the beige world.
Yeah. And because of this catastrophic lack of data boundaries, you search for a baby stroller once, and suddenly every data broker on the internet thinks you're pregnant for 6 months.
So let's trace that API pipeline. Like when I hit enter on that search, what is literally happening in those microseconds?
Well, it's not just Google knowing what you searched for.
Right.
The second you execute that search, the web page fires off telemetry data through embedded third-party tracking pixels.
All those invisible trackers.
Exactly. And within milliseconds, that context triggers real-time bidding protocols across these vast data brokerage networks.
So suddenly 50 different companies know my IP address.
Yes, they know your shadow profile just showed interest in maternity goods.
And that completely alters your digital reality. Like for months, your ads shift, your recommendations shift.
The sources even suggest back-end algorithms could adjust insurance quotes or credit limits based on that one click.
Because they statistically assume your life has drastically changed.
Yes, your financial risk profile is suddenly different to them.
Just from one search. It's so insidious.
It is. And the craziest part is that it's completely normalized. They brand it as, optimized user tracking.
Personalized experiences.
Right. But it reveals this massive structural flaw in cloud security. We're constantly told that centralized platforms are safe.
Oh, yeah. They have all the badges on their landing pages.
SOC2 compliant.
ISO certifications. Military-grade encryption banners.
But the sources argue that modern centralized cloud security is a joke.
They use a really vivid metaphor for this.
They really do. They describe it as an office building with a highly secure biometric retinal scanner on the front door.
Which sounds great.
But if you walk around to the back of the building, the entire back wall of the server room is made of cheap drywall with a massive cutout for an unauthorized cat door.
Okay, so the retinal scanner on the front door, that's the password requirement, right?
Exactly. That's the platform demanding 14 characters, an uppercase letter, 3 symbols, and 2-factor authentication.
Just to log in.
Right. It's compliance theater. It introduces friction at the entry point so the human user feels like the security is heavy.
But what is the drywall cat door at the back?
Those are the third-party API integrations. The data brokers, the assumed trust given to automated scrapers, they're just quietly siphoning your data out the back while you're typing your password in the front.
That is wild. And this whole broken architecture goes from bad to actively suicidal when you introduce artificial intelligence into it?
Oh, absolutely. The sources focus a lot on the current trend of AI coding assistants and autonomous agents.
The corporate directive right now is just give these AI agents unfettered access. Let them into the code bases, the databases, to optimize workflows.
And the sources say the corporate machine expects you to blindly trust AI coding assistants, which is the mathematical equivalent of handing a teenager the keys to a bulldozer and acting shocked when they level your garage.
I love that analogy so much. A teenager with a bulldozer.
Because it's not about malice. A teenager doesn't hate your garage.
Right, they just have an immense amount of physical power and absolutely zero spatial context.
Or mature judgment. An AI agent is a stateless entity. It has no conceptual understanding of how fragile your system is.
So it doesn't know that, deleting one legacy database table is going to take down the entire payment gateway.
Exactly. If you operate on assumed trust and just grant it broad access, it will interpret its instructions in ways that cause catastrophic structural damage.
But, let me push back a little here. Surely these massive platforms have safeguards against a bulldozer AI. We hear about SOC2 compliance all the time.
Right.
Companies spend millions undergoing these audits. Doesn't an audit close the cat door? Doesn't it put a governor on the bulldozer?
That right there is the fundamental lie of institutional credentialism. The beige world wants you to equate a policy document with a physical barrier.
Okay, yeah.
A compliance certificate like a SOC2 is essentially just an agreement about how things should operate, but a policy is not physics.
Wow. A policy is not physics.
And the sources bring the unforgeable physical receipts on this. They point to the Canvas LMS breach.
That was the one with 275 million student records stolen, right?
Yes, 275 million records. They also highlight the ongoing infiltrations of internal GitHub repositories all over the tech sector.
Because a breach of that size doesn't happen because someone guessed a password.
No, it happens because the underlying architecture allowed mass extraction at runtime.
Right.
A compliance certificate does not stop a malicious scraper or a misaligned AI agent from pulling your data. It just proves that during an audit, you had a document saying they shouldn't.
So relying on assumed trust is basically putting up a sign that says, please do not level the garage, and hoping the kid in the bulldozer reads it.
Precisely. In the digital realm, a promise is completely meaningless without mathematical enforcement.
So if the whole system relies on this deeply flawed concept of assumed trust, changing our passwords every 90 days is just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Completely. We can't fix the drywall with more compliance badges. We need a totally different operating stance.
Which brings us to the core mission of our session 0. We have to transition to zero trust.
Yes.
But let's define zero trust carefully, because you go to any tech conference and some vendor's trying to sell you an obscenely expensive dashboard called zero trust.
And the sources are explicitly clear about this. Zero Trust is not an enterprise software suite to be sold by a vendor.
If you think it is, you've missed the point entirely.
You're just buying another flavor of Beige World compliance theater? Zero Trust is an existential operating stance.
An existential operating stance. That takes it from like a network protocol to an actual way of living.
It has to be.
Yeah.
At its core, it's a mathematical refusal to assume that an external payload, whether that's code, a network request, or an AI agent, is safe just because it passed a superficial gate.
It's the realization that ownership is not optional.
Exactly.
But what exactly are we owning? Because we already established we don't own the SaaS software.
We're talking about the custody of your human OS.
Yeah.
Your human operating system.
Okay.
Zero Trust is fundamentally about protecting your cognitive agency from what the sources call the efficiency trap.
Walk me through that. How does the efficiency trap work?
Well, it's this seductive temptation to surrender your digital sovereignty, because managing it yourself introduces friction.
Right. It's just easier to let Google manage my identity.
Exactly. Let a centralized cloud host your business data, let an algorithm curate your news feed. But optimizing for frictionless efficiency strips away your nuance.
You become vulnerable to manipulation.
Yes. When you surrender custody of your context, your preferences and your behavior just become data points optimized to serve someone else's profit margin.
So zero trust is the defense mechanism against becoming a data point.
It is a shift from policy to physics. You don't ask an AI to sign an NDA and promise not to look at your data. You build an architecture where it is mathematically impossible for the AI to access that data unless it is explicitly authorized for a specific task on a strict time limit. You replace blind hope with unforgeable cryptographic proof.
I follow the logic when we're talking about servers, but you called this an existential stance for the human OS. How does this apply beyond code, like to my inbox or my memory?
It applies to everything that interacts with your cognitive space. That's why the sources call it an epistemic operating system.
Epistemology, the study of how we know what is true.
Right. The core mantra is never trust, always verify, assume breach.
Assume breach. Okay, but honestly, that sounds like a recipe for crippling paranoia.
It can sound that way.
Yeah, if I walk around assuming my whole life is compromised, how do I even function?
But the sources make a really crucial distinction here. Zero trust is not paranoia. It is verification.
What's the difference in practice?
Paranoia is an emotional state driven by a fear of the unknown, and it paralyzes you. Verification is a logical state driven by demand for evidence, and it empowers you.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you get an urgent email from your boss demanding a wire transfer. Assume trust looks at the sender name, says, that looks like my boss, and wires the money.
Which happens all the time.
Right. Now, paranoia says, everyone is trying to scam me. The internet is a lie. I'm never sending money again.
Also not helpful.
Exactly. Zero Trust says the sender name is easily spoofed. I will call my boss on their physical phone to verify this out of band before I execute the transaction.
Oh, I see. It just strips away the assumptions.
Yes.
Like if a viral tweet makes you furious, assume trust just retweets it. Zero trust pauses and asks, how do we know this is true? Show me the raw data.
Show me the unforgeable physical receipts. It's a methodology for maintaining your sanity in an environment designed to lie to you for engagement.
But there's a massive bottleneck here.
Which is?
Explaining hyper-complex cryptography, algorithmic extraction, and epistemic operating systems to normal people, it usually just makes their brains shut down.
Oh, absolutely. The anxiety spikes, the jargon builds a wall.
Yeah, and the listener just zones out. So how do you communicate this urgency without burning out the human node's mental hardware?
That exact problem brings us to one of the most brilliant, unexpected tactical solutions in the entire stack of documents.
Weaponized whimsy.
Yes, you cannot communicate these existential threats with sterile lectures or $80,000 corporate slide decks. You bypass the cognitive burnout by deploying weaponized whimsy and invoking the protocol of the sacred clown.
Okay, when I was reading the Safehood protocols, seeing Weaponized Whimsy officially documented as a high-grade cybersecurity tool completely blew my mind.
It rewired how I look at system defense entirely.
How do jokes secure a server? Like, practically.
Because in the bar software ecosystem, humor is not entertainment. It is formally codified as a structural
A
damper.
structural damper.
Yes. When you expose a human to the terrifying reality that their digital existence is vulnerable to extraction, their anxiety redlines.
Right, the defensive rappers engage and they just tune you out to protect their mental state. The activation energy required to process that dread is just too high.
Exactly. Humor lowers that activation energy. By making the user laugh, the system acts as a cognitive damper. It bypasses the fear response, so the heavy, high-friction truth can actually be processed by the human node.
The sources use biology to explain this, which I thought was fascinating. They call it reverse aposematism.
Right.
Now, regular aposematism is like a poison dart frog being neon blue. It's broadcasting, I'm toxic, don't eat me. What does it mean to reverse that digitally?
Reverse aposematism is taking highly lethal military-grade defensive capabilities and hiding them behind an aesthetic of harmless, absurd whimsy.
So like wrapping hyper-complex cryptography in ridiculous DIY metaphors.
Precisely. Instead of explaining a hard-coded API firewall using dry network terms, they describe a system overflowing with glittering kittens and alligator kibble.
And they talk about neutralizing threat payloads using friendship scepters and marshmallow skulls.
Yes. By wrapping the cryptography in that language, you broadcast safety to the human user. They see the whimsy, they laugh, they feel safe, and they actually engage with the technical material.
But simultaneously, this absurdity acts as a highly effective firewall against the beige world.
This is where it gets so mechanically brilliant. The sources explicitly outline how this whimsy crashes logic loops.
Because if you're a stateless AI scraper or a humorless corporate executive who only speaks in KPIs and frictionless synergies,
You physically cannot calculate irony. You cannot process existential dread or parse a joke.
the machine expects sterile, predictable data. When it encounters aggressive whimsy, it literally hesitates.
It runs natural language processing algorithms trying to categorize the marshmallow skulls.
And it fails.
It fails to parse the joke.
Uh.
That computational confusion creates a latency spike. The zero trust architecture measures that microsecond latency spike, identifies the intruder as a non-human entity lacking cultural context, and instantly air-gaps the connection.
It's a reverse Turing test. A regular Turing test asks, can a machine imitate a human well enough to fool us? But this feral CAPTCHA, this sacred clown protocol, asks, can you comprehend this deeply ironic, absurd joke?
And if you hesitate, you are a machine, and you are denied entry.
To protect your systems against stateless artificial logic, you deploy the most high-friction, purely human byproduct imaginable. Comedy, inside jokes, absurdity.
It filters out the compliance drones and acts as an anchor for a sovereign tribe of people who actually understand bare metal engineering.
Okay, so we've established the philosophy of zero trust and the language of weaponized whimsy. But philosophy and language aren't enough to stop a data breach. We need to look at the actual tools.
What the sources call the unsanded weapons required to reclaim your reality.
Unsanded weapons, I love that. We are transitioning from the logic to the physical execution because you can't just think your way out of the sauce rent trap.
You have to build the physical infrastructure to escape it. Which brings us to the first weapon, tenure.
Tenure, the infrastructure shield.
Yes. Its core mission is to stop you from paying rent to landlords who actively spy on you and monetize your business logic.
But how does tenure mechanically do that? Because, setting up the infrastructure to run my own email, my own accounting software, it seems impossibly out of reach for a normal business.
Tenure flips the architectural model entirely. Instead of renting access to centralized cloud platforms, Tenure operates as a managed service that deploys enterprise-grade open-source equivalents of those business tools directly onto your own private server.
So a server that I actually control, not a shared instance in some massive corporate data center.
Correct. Total bare metal custody.
The sources give really concrete examples of this. Like, instead of paying thousands for a massive corporate finance suite that stands your invoices for data points, Tenure deploys an open-source tool called Accounting.
Right. And instead of paying exorbitant per-document fees for digital signatures to a company that tracks your agreements, it deploys DocuSeal.
And fully self-hosted email infrastructure. The fundamental shift here is custody.
Absolutely. With Tenure, you hold the root credentials. You own every single byte of your database. Because you run it on your own private infrastructure shield, You just pay a flat monthly rate for the raw server compute power.
No surprise per seat fees when my company scales.
And no algorithm scanning your financial ledgers to serve you targeted ads.
Okay, but let me push back. Playing devil's advocate for the average small business owner.
Sure.
Setting up private Linux servers, managing open source software deployments, updates. Isn't the friction of ownership just too high compared to clicking subscribe on a slick cloud service?
That perfectly articulates the mental barrier the Beige world relies on. But we have to trace the efficiency trap to its logical conclusion.
Okay.
Yes, clicking subscribe is transiently convenient, but that convenience is exactly what leads to those crippling $80,000 a month cloud compute bills.
Right.
That convenience is what leads to the Canvas LMS breach, where millions of records are stolen because of an assumed trust API connection you didn't even realize was active.
So Tenure is saying the initial friction is the price of permanent security.
You are trading transient convenience for bare metal custody. You pour the concrete foundation for your own house so you never have to ask a corporate landlord for permission to use your own living room.
Okay, so Tenure gives you the impenetrable fortress. You own the land, the walls, the keys.
Yes.
But a fortress is useless if you can never interact with the outside world. Like, at some point, you need to invite an AI agent or a new piece of software inside to do some work.
Right.
How do you verify who they are without relying on a third-party gatekeeper? Because right now, if I want to verify a developer, I go to an app store controlled by a massive corporation.
They act as the ultimate gatekeeper, verify the identity, and take a 30% toll for the privilege. And they wrap that toll in a paternalism wrapper.
A paternalism wrapper.
The corporation says, trust us, we vetted this agent, it's safe. But zero trust mandates that we do not trust the title. We verify the telemetry. We don't trust the App Store's badge.
So what replaces it?
This is why the architecture demands the second weapon, Chrysalis. The sources define it as a federated capability registry.
So if Tenure is the physical walls of the fortress, Chrysalis is the mechanism for safe interaction at the threshold.
Exactly. It replaces the centralized store with a decentralized coven, a mesh network where sovereign edge devices can trade verified task details directly.
The sources refer to this mesh network as the butterfly DMV.
Which is amazing reverse aposematism.
Oh, absolutely. But under the hood, how does the butterfly DMV actually verify identity without Apple or Google? How do I know the AI agent knocking on my server isn't spoofing its credentials?
Chrysalis solves this using military-grade identity governance, specifically relying on decentralized identifiers, or DTIs.
Walk me through a DD. How does a decentralized ledger prove identity?
It relies on asymmetric cryptography, public and private key pairs. When an AI agent is developed, it generates a key pair. The public key is registered on the Chrysalis registry.
And the private key stays with the agent.
Right. So when that AI agent arrives at your Tenure fortress and requests access, it claims an identity. To prove it, Chrysalis issues a challenge, a random string of data called a nonce.
Okay.
The AI agent has to encrypt that nonce using its private key and send it back. Your system then decrypts it using the public key from the registry. If the data matches, the identity is mathematically proven. It's unforgeable.
So there's no middleman, no corporate toll booth.
None. Developers can publish their AI agents to Chrysalis without paying a cut to a gatekeeper. When the agent arrives, Chrysalis doesn't read the marketing copy. It initiates the cryptographic handshake.
If Zero Trust is the bouncer at the club, Chrysalis is the encrypted ID scanner. It doesn't care about your vibe. It cares about your unforgeable cryptographic signature.
Precisely. It guarantees the entity at the door is who they claim to be.
Okay, but this exposes the most terrifying vulnerability of all.
The execution risk.
Yeah. You own the fortress with Tenure. You mathematically verify the ID at the door with Chrysalis. The bouncer lets the AI agent inside, but a verified ID does not guarantee good behavior.
No, it doesn't.
Like a plumber might show you a valid license at the front door, but once you let him in, he could still steal your watch while fixing the sink. How do we constrain what this AI does once it's inside the perimeter?
Yeah, it brings us to the crown jewel of the Bauer software architecture, Papillon, the execution sandbox.
And normally, when an enterprise tech company introduces an execution sandbox, they present a sterile $80,000 slide deck filled with blue gradients and synergy buzzwords.
Which is pure Beige world assumed trust. A slide deck cannot stop a runtime memory leak.
Right. And the sovereign developers behind this architecture do not use slide decks.
No. They use Weaponized Whimsy to drop unforgeable physical receipts, proving their philosophy works on bare metal.
The sources describe Papillon not just as software, but as And this is a wild quote, a sandboxed local mongoose designed to intercept context laundering on an air-gapped circuit before it touches your database.
It's quite a sentence. Let's start with context laundering.
Yes, what is that?
Context laundering is the primary extraction method of the Beige world. It's when an AI agent or an API takes your private proprietary data, strips away the ownership tags and metadata, and silently feeds it back into a centralized corporate learning model to be monetized.
It launders your context into their profit.
Exactly. Papillon is the mongoose, the agile, aggressive predator engineered specifically to kill that snake before it can strike.
And it does this by treating the AI with an absolute zero-trust lack of respect.
Completely.
The sources state that Papillon frames the AI agent as a super intern.
A super intern, meaning it possesses a massive amount of raw computational power, but if left unsupervised for even a minute, it will immediately produce junior developer slop.
Junior developer slop, it completely strips away the mystical aura of artificial general intelligence.
It treats the agent as what it is, a highly capable but fundamentally unreliable tool that hallucinates when unchecked. Because it assumes the AI is a sloppy intern, Papillon refuses to give it free rein. Instead, it draws a cryptographic binding circle around the agent.
Like a wizard summoning a volatile demon. You stay within the circle, or you get banished. How is this binding circle actually enforced at the hardware level?
The sources call this perimeter the mandate, and it's enforced through OS-level SecOp sandboxing. Secure computing mode. It's a feature in the Linux kernel that restricts the system calls a process can make. But before the AI agent is allowed to execute a single action, Papillon uses a mechanism called ghost blocks to literally scry the future.
Scrying the future, again with a magical whimsy. But programmatically, how do you scry the future of an AI's actions?
It sounds like magic, but it is deterministic state mapping. When the AI requests to execute a task, it doesn't just run. The OS pauses the execution and simulates the exact pathway the code will take.
Oh, wow.
It maps out which files the agent intends to read, which memory registers it will access, what outputs it intends to generate. That map is the ghost block.
So it presents this deterministic preview to the system before the agent is granted the capability to touch live data.
Yes. You get a high-fidelity preview of the destruction before the teenager turns on the bulldozer.
And even if the ghost block looks safe, it operates on a strict time limit, right?
A strict time-to-live constraint. The agent's access naturally degrades and evaporates the moment the task is complete. It cannot set up camp in your network and establish a backdoor.
But the absolute peak of this architecture, the pure, unfiltered manifestation of weaponized whimsy, is how they physically enforce this sandbox. We have to talk about Project Monarch.
Project Monarch is the most breathtakingly physical implementation of zero trust I have ever encountered.
The sources reveal that to guarantee this air-gapped circuit remained uncompromised, the developers didn't just build a sleek aluminum server box.
No, that'd be too Beige world.
They shoved the entire local development environment, an orange Pi 5 computing board, and the local AI model into a 3D printed Super Nintendo shell.
A vintage 90s video game console shell. The aesthetic is pure reverse aposematism, but the hardware engineering is deeply serious.
To control this super intern, to guarantee the AI doesn't bypass the software SecOp sandbox, they hollowed out a vintage Chrono Trigger game cartridge.
Yes.
Inside that cartridge, they hardwired a cryptographic YubiKey. So if the mongoose detects context laundering, if the AI attempts a system call outside the ghost block mandate,
You don't scramble to click a revoke access button on a web dashboard that might be frozen by the very malware you're trying to stop.
you literally reach out and yank the Chrono Trigger cartridge out of the console.
It functions as a physical hardware-level kill switch.
Just think about the physical satisfaction of that. It instantly severs the logic gates. It's exactly like a frustrated 90s kid ripping the game out of the console when they're losing a boss fight.
It is brilliant because it removes software from the defense chain.
Right.
A slide deck is assumed trust. A corporate dashboard is an API call that can fail. But yanking a physical cartridge out of a hardware slot physically breaks the circuit. A stateless AI cannot negotiate with a severed wire. Bare metal custody is absolute.
And the absurdity doesn't start with the SNES. The sources outline other physical tools too, like Project Lepus Corota.
The air-gapped dictaphone.
Yes, an RF-severed forensic extraction tool. It's designed to let you record your most sensitive ideas without any corporate software listening through your microphone. And what does this military-grade vault look like?
It's disguised as a cartoonish, bright orange Judy Hopps carrot pen from the Disney movie Zootopia.
If a beige suit corporate executive saw that on a desk, they'd categorize it as a toy and completely ignore it.
But to the sovereign pilot who built it, it's a highly secure, unhackable, hardware-encrypted vault.
And finally, we have to mention Rita.
Rita the furry node.
Rita is an actual tuxedo marsh cat, a living biological cat whose behavioral patterns are used to track localized perimeter anomalies.
If the cat is acting erratic, the biological validation network is signaling that something in the physical environment, a frequency hum, a temperature spike, is off.
It's the ultimate joyful rejection of sterile corporate technology. It integrates the messy, tactile reality of biology and humor into a mathematically pure security architecture.
These are the unforgeable physical receipts. They didn't just run a code base. They built an entire philosophy.
When you grasp the mechanics of yanking a chrono trigger cartridge to execute a hardware kill on a rogue AI, suddenly cybersecurity isn't a boring chore. Zero trust isn't an anxiety-inducing lecture.
It becomes an act of joyful rebellion against a system that wants to grind you down into a monetizable data point.
That's the structural magic of the Sacred Clown Protocol. By making the revolution undeniably fun, it makes it incredibly dangerous to the status quo.
The Beige world relies on apathy to maintain control. When you make sovereignty engaging, that control mechanism shatters.
So, bringing this all back to you, the listener, why does this session zero matter? Because the modern internet, the beige world, wants you to accept algorithmic extraction as just the weather.
It wants you to view compliance theater as genuine security.
It wants you to remain in the sauce rent trap because it's convenient. We don't sell transient marketing assets here. We deploy the exact unsanded weapons required to reclaim your reality.
You do not have to accept their blueprint. The tools to build your own fortress exist.
Tenure allows you to reclaim baseline infrastructure. Chrysalis lets you verify external identities without paying a corporate toll booth. Papillon executes AI tasks in a cryptographically bound, hardware-enforced sandbox.
But more importantly, the mindset exists. Zero trust is about protecting the custody of your human OS.
It's the profound realization that your attention and your digital footprint are infinitely valuable, and you are under no obligation to surrender them to a stateless machine just because it asked politely in a slick user interface.
It's a commitment to demanding mathematical verification, replacing blind hope with cryptographic proof.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave the floor to you for a final thought. We've unpacked the extraction paradox, the shattered drywall of cloud security, the deterministic scrying of ghost blocks. But looking at the entirety of these sources, what is the core takeaway for how we navigate the future?
If we connect all these disparate dots, the rigorous math, the weaponized whimsy, the feral pop culture hardware hacks, it points to a fascinating and deeply provocative conclusion.
Which is?
Well, we spend an enormous amount of time in tech worrying about the Turing test. We obsess over whether AI algorithms will eventually perfectly mimic human logic or outsmart us computationally.
Right, the superintelligence sphere.
But based on everything we've audited today, the real defense mechanism isn't logic at all. Algorithmic scrapers and corporate surveillance networks are fundamentally designed to optimize for frictionless efficiency. They require predictability to function.
They need us to be predictable data points.
Exactly. Therefore, perhaps the ultimate, unbreakable act of digital rebellion in the future isn't writing more complex cryptography. Perhaps the only way to truly protect our human OS from algorithmic extraction is by remaining aggressively, stubbornly, and unpredictably absurd.
A machine can guess your password, but it can never compute your punchline. Thank you for joining us for this foundational audit of our digital reality. Until our next deep dive, don't trust the caterpillar, verify the chrysalis, and never be afraid to embrace your inner sacred clown.